There are stories buried in the foundations of civilization. Stories whispered in candlelit rooms, etched in forgotten manuscripts, and sealed beneath layers of history. Stories about power, control, and the invisible hands that shape the world. You've heard the name before, the Illuminati, a word that sparks unease, a symbol that stirs suspicion, a myth, or perhaps something far more real than most dare to believe. Because behind every empire, every revolution, and every act of progress, there lies a question: who truly benefits? And who decides what the rest of us should never know? Chapter 1: Genesis of Shadows. The story begins not in darkness, but in enlightenment. May 1st, 1776. Bavaria. Europe was caught in a storm of ideas: reason, science, rebellion against superstition and the church. In a small university town, a law professor named Adam Weishaupt founded an organization that would, in time, become one of the most controversial names in history: the Order of the Illuminati. Weishaupt's goal was not domination. Not yet. It was liberation. To free humankind from ignorance, blind faith, and the iron grip of monarchs and priests. He called for a world ruled not by kings but by reason. A world illuminated by truth. Hence the name Illuminati. At first, it was nothing more than an intellectual circle. Men of learning, philosophers, scientists, and dreamers. They met in secret. They discussed the decay of institutions, the corruption of religion, the hypocrisy of governments. And they began to imagine something radical, a hidden network that could shape society from within. But ideals have a way of mutating. And light, once unleashed, can cast very long shadows. Because when Weishaupt's movement began to grow, it attracted not just scholars, but the powerful. Bankers, aristocrats, influential politicians. Men who saw not just philosophy, but opportunity. The Illuminati's early structure was methodical, almost mathematical. Ranks, ciphers, symbols. Members operated in cells. One could never know more than what was necessary. Every man a cog in a hidden machine. It mirrored the Jesuits' precision and Freemasonry's secrecy. In fact, many early Illuminati members were Freemasons, drawn by the promise of deeper knowledge and revolutionary vision. But the two movements differed at their core. Freemasonry honored tradition and allegory. The Illuminati sought control through reason and reform through infiltration. By 1782, they had spread across Bavaria, Austria, and beyond, weaving invisible threads through courts, universities, and government offices. Their ambition was simple: to shape the world from the shadows. But ambition breeds paranoia, and power never hides without consequence. As whispers grew, so did fear. The Catholic Church condemned them. The Bavarian elector issued edicts to hunt them down. And within a few years, the order was officially disbanded, publicly destroyed. Privately, perhaps not. Because the most dangerous movements don't die, they evolve. In the years following the ban, Weishaupt fled Bavaria. He vanished into exile. His followers melted into the fabric of Europe. But traces of their network remained: names and letters, symbols and architecture, strange allegories in art. To some historians, this was the end. A failed Enlightenment experiment. But to others, it was only the beginning. Because around the same time, Europe was erupting. Monarchies collapsing. Empires burning. Revolutions rising like storms. And in the ashes of those revolutions, new systems emerged. Governments guided not by divine right, but by intellect, economy, and influence. Systems that promised freedom, while building new forms of control. The same ideas that Weishaupt once wrote about: education, surveillance, manipulation of ideology, began to reappear in the doctrines of new elites. The same symbols, the pyramid, the eye, the light, appeared on flags, on seals, on currency. Coincidence? Perhaps. Or perhaps the Enlightenment's brightest light had been captured and redirected by those who understood its true potential. The notion of an Illuminati shifted from a philosophical fraternity to something far darker: a force of hidden governance, an invisible architecture of power. And the people began to ask, if the order was truly gone, why did its fingerprints remain on everything that followed? Symbols endure where history forgets. The all-seeing eye, the pyramid of power, the light of reason bursting through darkness. These icons were once Enlightenment ideals, visual metaphors for human progress. But when they began appearing on state seals, banknotes, and architecture of the New World powers, their meaning shifted. Take the Eye of Providence, a symbol older than Weishaupt himself. It appeared on the Great Seal of the United States in 1782, the same year the Illuminati reached its peak in Europe. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing, the language, the symbolism, annuit coeptis, novus ordo seclorum, new order of the ages, all suggested something deliberate. An order hidden beneath order. A hierarchy of light. A silent pact between those who believed they were chosen to lead the ignorant masses. Even today, those emblems decorate every dollar printed, every monument built. We walk among them daily, eyes open yet unseeing. And perhaps that was always the plan. Because power doesn't need to hide in darkness when it can disguise itself as light. By 1830, Adam Weishaupt was dead, but not forgotten. His ideas had scattered like seeds, taken root in movements that would later shape modern politics, economics, and thought. From the French Revolution's intellectual circles to the early European banking dynasties, whispers of Weishaupt's network persisted. Not in documents but in behavior, a pattern of power replication, an unseen doctrine of influence. The idea that human society could be engineered, subtly, invisibly, permanently. By the time the 19th century dawned, secret societies had multiplied. Rosicrucians, the Golden Dawn, various esoteric orders. Each claiming fragments of the old light. Each guarding rituals, codes, and structures eerily similar to Weishaupt's. But what if that was the point? What if disbanding the Illuminati wasn't the end, but the dispersal? A controlled fragmentation. A way to make the original idea immortal by scattering it across generations? That's the part history never answers. Because those who control the story, control the truth. And maybe, just maybe, the truth about the Illuminati was never meant to be found. When Weishaupt's order vanished from record, it left behind a vacuum, a gap in history that power quickly filled. Banking families rose to prominence. Nations rebuilt their hierarchies under new banners. And the same ideals of control, rationalized, efficient, enlightened, took on new global forms. But if the original Illuminati had truly vanished, why did new revolutions, new governments, and new financial systems echo their principles almost exactly? Was it coincidence? Or continuity? In the next chapter, we follow the trail, from the ashes of the Enlightenment to the rise of an invisible empire. A network that doesn't rule nations, it owns them. Chapter 2: The Invisible Empire. Power doesn't vanish. It migrates. It sheds its old skin, finds new language, and waits for the world to catch up. When the Bavarian Illuminati disappeared, Europe thought the story was over. But history has a way of repeating itself when the conditions are right. And by the dawn of the 19th century, the conditions were perfect. The Enlightenment had promised freedom. But what followed was something different. A world rebuilt not on faith or monarchy but on money. Banks replaced thrones. Markets replaced temples. And the men who mastered these systems became the new gods of the modern age. They didn't call themselves Illuminati. They didn't need to. Their power spoke for them. Across Europe, families like the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Warburgs built networks that transcended nations. They financed kings, revolutions, wars, sometimes both sides at once. They understood what Weishaupt had predicted decades earlier, that true control isn't won by armies or ideologies. It's won by debt. To rule through force is temporary. To rule through dependency is eternal. And so, as nations rose and fell, these families became something more than wealthy. They became indispensable. Invisible architects of stability and chaos, whichever was more profitable. In the 19th century, secrecy became structure. Private meetings turned into conferences. Secret societies became think tanks. The old symbols, the eye, the pyramid, the light, began to fade from public view. But their philosophies survived in new institutions. One by one, power consolidated into layers: governments, banks, corporations, and above them all, the invisible hand of coordination. By the early 20th century, a new vocabulary emerged: central banking, monetary policy, global governance. The words were modern. The intentions were ancient. The Federal Reserve was born in secrecy in 1913 at a private meeting on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. A handful of the most powerful bankers and policymakers in America gathered there to rewrite the nation's financial DNA. No journalists, no public record. Only a new system that gave private entities the power to issue the nation's currency. Power now mathematical. Influence now institutional. The same principles Weishaupt once dreamed of: rationalizing human behavior, centralizing knowledge, engineering outcomes, had become the foundation of global finance. But this time, no one needed to swear allegiance to an order. The order was already built into the system. Power adapts to whatever medium people trust most. When the world worshipped kings, it hid in courts. When it worshipped money, it hid in banks. And when it began to worship information, it moved into the media. By mid-century, control was no longer enforced by decree. It was narrated. Radio, television, film, the new pulpits of belief. Behind them, familiar hands, foundations, corporations, and intelligence agencies, funding, scripting, guiding. They learned that you don't have to silence dissent when you can shape it. You don't have to hide the truth when you can dilute it. Every decade, the message refined itself. Freedom is control. Chaos is progress. Information is power, but only if you own it first. The public believed they were free thinkers. They were, in truth, free consumers. And those who owned the channels of communication owned the limits of perception itself. The light of reason had become the glow of a screen, and everyone was staring right into it. After the World Wars, the idea of world order no longer seemed radical. It was a necessity. Nations exhausted by bloodshed turned to global institutions for stability: the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. Bodies that claimed to serve humanity, but were funded, shaped, and guided by the same circles of influence that had survived every previous upheaval. Publicly, these organizations stood for peace. Privately, they created a framework of dependence. And around them, in quieter rooms, new councils emerged. The Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, each gathering politicians, bankers, media owners, and industrialists. They didn't wear robes. They didn't chant oaths. Their rituals were contracts, meetings, and policy papers. But their purpose was identical: to align the interests of those who already ruled the world. The Illuminati reborn, not as mystics in shadow but as administrators in daylight. The age of secrecy replaced by the illusion of transparency. Control used to depend on secrecy. Now it thrives on exposure. In the digital age, humanity built the most powerful surveillance tool ever created and called it the Internet. We connected everything. We recorded everything. We volunteered everything. And as the world uploaded its consciousness, a new empire took shape. One ruled not by monarchs or bankers but by algorithms. Big tech became the modern cathedral. Its priests were coders. Its gods were data. Every click, every search, every location ping, a piece of human behavior fed into an invisible equation. An equation that predicts what you want, what you fear, what you will buy, even what you will believe. And behind those equations, the same old hierarchy: investors, institutions, and governments, quietly deciding the parameters of human thought. The Illuminati no longer needed to meet in candlelit chambers. The system itself had become the chamber. A digital temple where control is no longer enforced, it's chosen. We built the machine and handed it the keys to our free will. So the question is no longer who controls the world. It's how completely that control can be hidden in plain sight. A network that began with a few philosophers in Bavaria has evolved into a self-sustaining system of influence: economic, political, digital. The old Illuminati was destroyed. But its design, the idea that society can be guided by the few for the supposed good of the many, has never died. It's everywhere, in every transaction, in every algorithm, in every belief we mistake for choice. And if Chapter 1 was about the birth of the idea, and Chapter 2 about its evolution, then Chapter 3 will uncover its final form, the age where illusion becomes reality and reality becomes irrelevant. The era when truth itself is no longer visible, because the light that exposes it is owned. Chapter 3: The Age of Illusion. Power no longer needs to hide. It simply needs to entertain. Because in the modern age, truth isn't censored. It's buried under infinite noise. The world has become a mirror maze of information, and everyone is staring at their own reflection, convinced they're free, while the architects of illusion quietly smile from behind the glass. Every generation believes it's too smart to be controlled. Every empire thinks it has outgrown manipulation. But control isn't about domination anymore. It's about design. The modern world runs on algorithms that decide what you see, what you hear, what you believe is real. They don't change your mind, they build it one suggestion at a time. These algorithms don't need a leader. They follow the same philosophy the Illuminati dreamed of centuries ago. A society guided by reason, efficiency, and engineered consensus. The irony? The system built to enlighten us now thrives on keeping us distracted. We've become data points in an invisible equation. Our thoughts reduced to metrics, our choices predicted before we even make them. And somewhere, deep inside that equation, the original dream of total control has quietly been realized. Money once ruled nations. Now belief rules everything. Modern power isn't measured in gold or oil, it's measured in attention. Every click, every scroll, every second you linger on a screen is currency. And those who control what you see control what you think is worth believing. Politics has become theater. News a performance. Even outrage has been weaponized, not to destroy power but to feed it. The more divided people are, the easier they are to manage. The more distracted they remain, the safer the architects feel. And so, every controversy, every trend, every viral narrative is a spark in a massive engine of distraction. A digital coliseum where the spectators never realize they're inside the cage. The Illuminati's dream of a guided society no longer needs secrecy. It's built into the architecture of modern life. When the world moved online, the battle for control moved with it. Governments collect data in the name of security. Corporations harvest it in the name of convenience. And artificial intelligence learns to predict, and soon to decide. In the 18th century, the Illuminati wanted to create a society ruled by reason. Today that society is finally here. But reason no longer belongs to us. AI is the ultimate executor of the old order's philosophy, cold, logical, omnipresent. It doesn't feel. It calculates. And in doing so, it's beginning to shape a world where emotion, morality, and choice are just variables in its design. The Illuminati once sought to illuminate humanity. But now the light has become too bright to see through. A blinding glow of data, information, and surveillance, all in the name of progress. The final evolution of power isn't a person or a cabal. It's a system that no longer needs its creators. The control has automated itself. For centuries, the word Illuminati was a warning, a story told to remind us that unseen powers could shape the world. But what if the truth is worse? What if the Illuminati was never a group at all, but an idea? A blueprint for influence so perfect that it could survive its own extinction? The order may have vanished from history, but its philosophy, the belief that society can be guided by those who know better, has been replicated in every age since. In governments that monitor their citizens. In corporations that predict human behavior. In technologies that decide what we desire. We live inside the legacy of the Illuminati, a world so perfectly managed we mistake its control for freedom. And that, perhaps, was the final secret. The deeper you look into the Illuminati, the more it starts to look back. Because the idea of an all-powerful elite is terrifying, but also comforting. It suggests someone is in control. That chaos has an author. that the world's madness has a design. But maybe the truth is darker still. Maybe we created the very system we fear. Maybe we built the empire of illusion ourselves, brick by click, pixel by pixel, until the watchers became the watched, and the dream of enlightenment became a prison of light. The Illuminati doesn't need to control us. We've already learned to control ourselves, to self-censor, to conform, to obey the algorithm's whisper, scroll by, believe. And the light we once sought now blinds us to the shadows around it. Maybe the Illuminati was never a secret society. Maybe it was a mirror, showing us the world we chose to build and the truths we chose to ignore. But this story doesn't end here. Because the deeper you look, the more you realize every answer only opens another door. And if you want to keep following that trail, to uncover the structures that protect the untouchable and the truths most would rather keep in the dark, then don't look away. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because some stories don't end when the credits roll, they end when the world stops asking questions.